So what's fascinating, at least to me, is there is this big event that's going to be taking place next Wednesday, September 3rd, and it is essentially called the Victory of World War II, 80th anniversary. And the reason it's a big deal isn't just that it's the 80th anniversary, it's who will be coming. And I always find it really, I like how these events are staged. And what I mean by that is there's actually an event that happens before. It's called the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, the SCO. And the SCO is a group of countries that came together about 25 years ago to try and have a dialogue and cooperation about security issues, like military security issues within the greater Asian region. So this includes Russia, Kazakhstan, other areas in sort of Middle Asia, if you will. And that event's happening at the end of this week on the 31st, I think, in Tianjin. But this time around, it's Xi Jinping has invited and has Vladimir Putin from Russia coming, has Narendra Modi coming as well, and a host of other world leaders. But these are predominantly the world leaders of what we refer to as the Global South. And in videos in the past, I've talked about this, and I think it's super important because what you have taking place right now is a truly unfortunate separation of world powers. You have what I will refer to as the 20th century world powers of the Europeans and the United States, Canada, Japan to a certain extent. But then you have the Global South and all of these emerging world leaders. And it's not just China or India, but then you have Brazil, you have Turkey. I think the Turkey President Erdogan is also going to be in Beijing next week. And essentially, all of these countries over the last 25 years worked very diligently, China included, to find ways to cooperate with the United States. And the United States, for the most part, was understanding, and there was a sense of trying to create this global group of nations to work on issues like climate change, or if there were financial crises, or whatever the case might be. But beginning in really the first Trump term, you began to see a breakdown between those old nation powers and the Global South. And the Global South truly being led by China. Now, this was finally recognized, as I saw it, by the United States when the previous Biden administration, Joe Biden's team, had come in. And they tried to work with various groups, other countries, to try and get them to separate, if you will, from China. But the issue was these were two very, not just competing, but what I refer to as diametrically opposed platforms, ways of looking at the world. The United States, for the longest time, has had this concept of you're either with me or you're against me. We saw this all the way back in the 25 years ago, George W. Bush. He made the famous comment of you're either with us or with the terrorists. But that's not really the best way to go through, I think, global development. You want people to try and find where they have areas of commonality, where we will certainly disagree, but I'm sure can find ways to agree. And then more recently, during this new Trump administration and all of the trade conflict that's been ongoing, you've seen Donald Trump literally come out and say, you're either with us or you're with China, right? You have to pick. He said, you have to pick which is going to be your partner. The Chinese have had an entirely different approach. It doesn't matter if it's Xi Jinping or it was Hu Jintao or Jiang Zemin even. The idea was, we understand, say Japan, Germany, we understand that you will prioritize that your number one ally, partner, is the United States. But that doesn't mean that you have to make us the enemy, right? You can work with both partners, even if one partner may be elevated higher than the other. So China, I've always believed, has been truly smart about that level of engagement. And this is playing out right now with this big sort of military parade that's going to be happening next Wednesday, because you're now finding that increasingly more countries, India and Brazil in particular, These are countries that were more historically aligned with the United States than with China, especially India. And in the last 2 to 3 weeks, Donald Trump has made it a point to target those two countries. He's gone after India with Lula, saying we're going to put 50% tariffs on you because of these reasons. And then just a week or two back, he went after Narendra Modi in India, saying we're going to put 50% tariffs on you because you buy Russian oil. Like, so we buy Russian oil. Like, you can't do that because of Ukraine. Like, it's no longer about trade. It's about Donald Trump, not America per se, but Donald Trump, who is putting his will, what he believes is the right will, on these countries that are just simply saying, hey, I just want to do business. And here's the best part. The president of India, Narendra Modi, he hasn't been to China in 7 years. Now he's coming. Why is he coming? Because people are beginning to wake up and saying we're probably better off building a coalition of other nations, because they're being unreasonable. So this will be, I think next week is going to be a fascinating week on the world stage to watch what plays out in Beijing. Because the way the world is now evolving is so different than it had in the last 30 years, and then you combine that with the American, I would call the sort of foreign policy, their view of the world has not changed over that time. I think perhaps better put, America lives in the 20th century, and their mentality of how the world should work is very 20th century thinking. Again, there's no judgment. This is not about bad or wrong, but it is antiquated. The world has changed. The world has changed dramatically since the fall of the Berlin Wall, since 9/11, right? Since the global financial crisis. And with each passing year, the world becomes more and more multipolar. Other countries around the world are saying, we want to have our own ability to choose. China has recognized this. China has engaged in different ways with different countries in that fashion. China, in my opinion, has a more 21st century outlook on how to work and engage with different counterparties. And until the United States recognizes that there needs to be a fundamental change in how they engage globally, this will continue to see a splintering, a separation between, again, these old world countries, the Europeans and the Americans, and all of these. And it's not, I mean, we're talking Indonesia, we're talking Malaysia, we're talking Argentina. You know, they're all rising in their own way, and they just want to have the ability to make their own choices without fearing what the Americans may or may not do.